peeps, it's Angela. The first thing you'll want to do is make a core for your dish, and you can do that by using scrap clay in any little bowl you have. Just roll it out on your thickest setting and bake it for 30 minutes. The silk screens that I'm using today are both from ojoycreations.com. I'm also using some clay rolled out on a medium thick setting. We're going to need about 3 inches of each color squared and then a smaller amount to use for the tentacle and the details. So I've silk screened my 2 images, and I'm going to use the metal form that came with my Easy Bangles kit as a cutter. It's 3 inches and the perfect size for this. So I'm just going to cut out both silk screen images, and then I'm going to apply them to the pre-baked core. My form core is also 3 inches of clay, just so you're aware of that. It will need to stretch a little bit more, but that's easy enough to do once you warm your clay up a little bit. Remember to always apply either liquid clay or bacon bond anytime you're applying raw clay to cured clay. It needs that to help it adhere. So I like to use a pretty heavy coat of liquid clay. It helps a little bit, in my opinion, with reducing air that gets trapped between the clay that's raw and the clay that's cured. That's just a personal thing that I do and how it works for me. You use the amounts that work for you. I'm going to be stretching this veneer a little bit, so you'll see me using the palm and the thumb pad. That's because my hands are pretty warm, and it gives me enough heat that the clay starts to move a little bit without marring the paint or stretching it and making it crack. So apply both your veneers, one on the bottom, one on the top, working out from the center, making sure that you release any trapped air bubbles. If you're new to watching my videos, first, welcome. I appreciate you being here. And I just want to mention that I do not use music throughout the soundtrack. I will be providing verbal and written instructions on the screen, and any periods of silence will be just that. There won't be any filler music. Once you have your veneer in place, take a piece of parchment paper or regular paper and put over top of your dish and just burnish around the bottom and the edges just to remove any fingerprints. This is also a good way to make sure that you don't have any trapped air. With the burnishing, you can fill it a little bit. You'll feel it move under there, and then it also will pop up and become a little bit more visible. I'm going to repeat the same process, just applying a heavy layer of liquid clay and then applying my interior veneer. I will be working that veneer up over the top edge of the dish and connecting it with the bottom veneer. Again, just keep an eye out for those pesky air bubbles and pop them as soon as you feel them. I am just gently punching the two different colors together on the edge. I'm going to fold it a little bit, just kind of tuck it a little bit under because I want the light blue to be visible from the top of the dish. I'm just going to continue shaping and working out any air bubbles until I have the veneer fully applied and I'm happy with it. And then I'm going to set it aside. I am not going to bake the dish at this point, but if you're more comfortable with doing that, feel free. I will be using more liquid clay or bacon bond to adhere the tentacle to the center of the dish, and I just find that a little bit easier to do when the clay is still raw. For the next part of the dish, we're going to make the little tentacle that is the actual ring holder part of the dish. I find it easier to roll out tiny balls to use as the suckers in ascending or descending sizes, and I judge how many I'm going to need by the length of my tentacle. So roll out a tapered log of the clay color you're going to use. I find that somewhere between 3 to 4 inches is a nice length. And then I want the diameter of the tentacle at the base to be about 1/2 inch, a little bit less than 1/2 inch, somewhere in that area. I just find that is thick enough to hold the shape without being so thin or too thick. So this is what we're going for. That's the tentacle. As you can see, you need a lot of those little sucker balls, somewhere between maybe 20 to 25 sets, just depending upon how many that you want, how long your tentacle is, and how closely together you want your little suckers. If you don't want that many on there, that's perfectly fine. You can do it however you like. I'm going to start from the top and apply them in pairs. And at this point, I'm just lightly pressing them to get them to attach. You're working raw clay to raw clay, so you won't need anything to help with that. I'm just reshaping as I go, tiny little pairs of dots all the way down the length of the tentacle. And once I have them all applied, I'll go back in with a dotting tool and actually form those little tiny balls into octopus suckers. Okay, now that all the little balls are stuck on, I'm going to take my darting tools and I'm going to work my way up, just pressing in. And I find that press and twist releases very easily, and that keeps your ball from coming off your tentacle onto your dotting tool. Just press and turn it to get it to release. And you're opening up all of the little circles. That way we can come back in and apply a little bit of paint to highlight them, and that will make our suckers. As you go further up the tentacle, your little balls are going to be smaller, so use a dotting tool with a smaller tip. I used 3 different size dotting tools to go up the length of the tentacle. I'm just going back in and redefining some that weren't quite open all the way. So now kind of stand your tentacle on in, and you're just making a determination of how you want it to move, a little bit of wave within the tentacle, pressing it flat into your work surface just to make sure the base is level. You do want that part to be flat. Any of the other part, you can curve it any way you like. I'm also going to reshape anything that I have caused to be indented or less than round as I go through, just redefining it and making sure that the shape is how I want it. And then once it is, I'm going to bake it in a accordion folded paper. That will help support it laying down and allow it to keep its shape without any shiny spots or flat spots caused by being on a tile. Once I toss it in the oven to bake it, I'm just doing that because I'm not using any kind of wire to support the clay. So I'm going to bake it that way it's firm, and I don't need any additional support when I attach it to the dish. Just for clarity, I am not curing the dish at this time. The dish is still raw. I'm simply curing the tentacle itself for about 30 minutes because I want to put a full bake on it. I don't believe in partial baking. You can bake as many times as you want, but always bake it for the full time each time to prevent any brittleness in the center, which leads to breakage. So the tentacle is fully cured. The dish itself is still raw. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is use some of the lighter color acrylic paint that I silk screened my image with to apply some highlights to the tentacle by offsetting the individual suckers. I'm going to work out of my paint cap just because that's easier. I'm doing this before I cure the dish to allow the paint to be heat set as well. You could do it after. It's just an easier thing for me to hold it. Use your dotting tool and go back in, and we're just putting a little bit of paint on the inside of the sucker to provide some definition. If you use a little bit bigger dotting tool than the hole that you're working with, it's really easy to apply it just in that one spot, and it doesn't cover the whole tentacle. You just want it on the inside. Or you could skip this if you wanted to. Another way that you could provide some accent here would be to roll up a lot of tiny little balls in your lighter color and insert them into the tentacle shape before you bake it. This is just quicker. I'm going to apply a little bit of liquid clay. You could use Bacon Bond and just attach this cured tentacle to the inside of the dish. Because my clay is still raw, it'll attach pretty easily. If you have cured your dish already, you might find that it's easier to use a drop of super glue to attach the tentacle to the dish. But either way, attach it, and then you are going to cure your dish. Cure it for the full time. I like to do it for a full hour. Remember, you want to do 1/4 inch of thickness for 15 minutes. So build some leeway in there. You're not going to hurt the dish by over curing it, but it can become fragile if you under cure it. So it's always nice to err on the side of baking longer than you think you need to. I'm going to finish my dish with deep shine because I did want the wet look. It is a taller piece than would fit under my UV light, so I'm going to use a 6x6x6 box lined with foil and a jar to help me cure it. I have attached clear little footers on the bottom of my UV light and put a foil skirt around it. That just allows me to work with items that have more height. This is what my pieces look like with the deep shine applied. Hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. You can find me on Facebook at Polymer Clay Peeps. Have a good day.